You're listening to the Spark Your Light podcast, episode number 249, 3 phrases I never say. This episode is on video, so if you want to watch it on video, head over to YouTube and check it out on video. This episode is for you if you are searching for those mindset shifts to just make you feel better. These 3 phrases are things that are going to help you not only feel better, but also make significantly more progress towards your goals if you ditch them from your vocabulary. So if you are goal-oriented and you just eat up all the positive mindset stuff, which I feel like is all my listeners, so you're probably into this episode. If so, it's going to be a great fit. Keep listening. So there are 3 phrases that I've completely removed from my vocabulary. These aren't the only 3 phrases, but these are ones in particular that I think are really important and are just great places to start if you want to improve your language. Before I dive into the phrases, I want to talk about why our language is so important. So a lot of people talk about changing your thoughts. I just talked about it on the last episode. So if you haven't listened to that one and you want to improve your thought process, that's a really great one to tune into. But the truth is that changing your thoughts is really difficult for most people. Why? Well, number one, a lot of our thoughts are subconscious, so we don't even know we're thinking them. How many times have you gotten in the car and you're supposed to be going one place? So it's like you're supposed to be going to, I don't know, the grocery store. But you start automatically driving somewhere else that you drive all the time, maybe work. And you're like, wait a second. Why am I here? How did I get here? I'm going completely the wrong way. If that is you, that's normal. You're human. That's how our brains work. And so many of our thoughts are just completely automatic in our subconscious mind, and we don't even know we're thinking them. And when we try to change our thoughts, how can we change thoughts we don't even know we're thinking? They're just habitual thoughts that we think every day. Every morning on our drive to work, every time we're in the car driving and someone cuts us off, every time that we are, doing these routine habitual things we do in everyday life, we're having a lot of these, unfortunately, negative thoughts. An average person has 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day, and 80% of them are negative. That's extremely concerning. Now, I always say your goal isn't to get to 0% negative thoughts. I'm not sure that would be healthy. I've heard Dr. Amen talk about this before, where he says that some level of anxiety and negative thoughts is actually a good thing. It's healthy. It keeps us safe. It keeps us from making reckless decisions. So our goal isn't to get it to 0, but our goal is to reduce that 80% to a lower percentage that is more supportive to us feeling good. And in order to do that, one of the easiest ways is to shift our language, because we hear the words we say out loud. And so we're able to notice when they're negative. Now, sometimes you might have a reaction to a situation, and so you start speaking negative thoughts. Within a couple minutes, you may realize that, hey, that is not really supportive. That is not really helping me. And you can change them. Oftentimes, you'll say it. And if you have these phrases in the back of your mind, this is just a really great place to start, is with these phrases. But you can actually begin to do it with all of your language. You can really just start to work on, how do I speak? And are the words that I choose, are they supporting me and moving closer to my goals? Or are they moving me farther away from my goals? Are they supporting me in feeling good, or are they causing me to feel worse? And just really being aware of that language. But if you have some phrases like I'm going to give you today that you can kind of just make a mental note of, your brain will start to recognize them. So our brains have a filtering system called the reticular activating system. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, you may have heard me talk about the reticular activating system before. It's also known as the RAS for short. And essentially what the reticular activating system does is it filters all of the thoughts that we have and all of the information we come across on a daily basis. And it filters through for what it deems as important. because we come across so much information. It would be impossible for our brains to process all of that. So what our brains do is they decide, okay, this is important, this is important, this is important. And those things are the things that we actually see, that we actually recognize, that we actually come across. It helps us spot opportunities. It helps us do all kinds of things that we don't even know are happening underneath the surface, all because of that filtering. So the great thing about this is we program the filter with our thoughts and our beliefs. So if you want to notice some of these negative language patterns, what you can do is you can reprogram the filter by pointing out to your reticular activating system, these are phrases that I do not want to say. So how do you do that? You just focus on them. You think about them. So essentially the programming happens based on what we think about and our beliefs. So by listening to this episode, that's enough to start to program your RAS to notice these things and bring some conscious awareness over these phrases so that when you say them, you can go back and rephrase. So what I recommend is as you go forward, you will inevitably catch yourself saying these phrases. In fact, I probably titled the episode wrong. I said 3 phrases I never say. I sometimes still say them because it's automatic, it's a reaction. And then I think to myself, I don't want to choose that phrase because it's not supporting me. And I will just take a pause and I will rephrase my sentence. Sometimes people tell me that they're concerned about what other people might think. So they're in a conversation with someone, they hear themselves say one of these phrases and they want to rephrase what they're saying, but they don't want to have to explain themselves, especially if they're talking to someone negative. One of the most common questions I get is about negative influences in your life. You might have people who are in your life that think negatively, that speak negatively. And these may be people that maybe you can slightly distance yourself from, but maybe they are a part of your life because they're the coworker that sits next to you or they're a family member. And so how can you start to distance yourself from those negative thoughts that they're constantly sharing? Well, one of the ways is not trying to change them, right? Because people change when they want to change. They don't change because you want them to change, even though we all wish that it would be that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So people often don't want to explain themselves to some negative person that they might be talking to because they happen to be speaking to them or they need to be speaking to them, but they catch themselves saying one of these phrases. Maybe they're even more likely to say one of these phrases when they're in a conversation that could be triggering to them. And they don't want to have to explain themselves to that person. The good news, you don't have to, because that person is not going to pick up on the fact that you are now rephrasing your sentence. When we speak as human beings, a lot of times we reiterate things. We share the same thing multiple times in a sentence. It's quite normal in conversation. And I know this because I've been reframing words and phrases that I say since I started my personal development journey, which is, I don't even know, probably like 9 years ago now. I think that's right. I don't even know. I guess you could say my personal development journey really started when I was 16 years old, which was, I'm 29, so a lot of years ago, when I read The Secret and I started learning about law of attraction and the words that we choose. Really, it all started there. And so it's been a lot of years that I've been really working on this. But probably about 5 years ago, I would say, I really started actively trying to change the phrases and the words. And I barely ever mention in conversation, unless it's to a friend who is also on a personal development journey and who is also working on choosing better thoughts and choosing better words, in which case I might say to them, oh, I'm trying to stop saying this phrase. So I'd rather say it this way, and I'll explain to them what I'm doing. But most of the time I don't explain anything to anyone and no one even notices. So that all being said, we're going to dive into the phrases. I'm going to share with you each of the 3 phrases and what I say instead to give you some ideas for how you can start to try these reframes. So the first phrase is, you guessed it, I can't. It is something that just naturally comes up a lot when we're frustrated, when we feel limited by things. And it's just not a phrase that supports us in any way. Usually there is some way, shape, or form that we could do the thing we're saying we can't. It just might be really hard. We might not be willing to do it, which is okay. We don't have to be willing to do everything. I think it's important to acknowledge what's important to us. What are our values? What is the vision we have for our life? What things are we willing to put an extra effort for, and what things are we not willing to put an extra effort for? Maybe you're willing to try something if you've tried everything else first, but that is the last thing that you're willing to try. It is the worst case scenario, right? Or maybe you're not willing at all and you just don't care so much about that thing. So it's not that you can't, it's that you don't want to, which is totally fine. But that is a big difference in language, because when you tell yourself, I can't, it really shoots down your self-confidence. When you tell yourself, I can't, it immediately pauses your brain from thinking of suggestions and ideas for how you can. It basically blocks your creative instinct when you tell yourself you can't. So instead of saying I can't, try saying I can, or I'm willing. Okay, I'm going to admit it. I was about to say I'm willing to try, but I'm going to give you a fast forward and say the next phrase is I'll try. So we're not going to reframe with that, and I'll explain why. But I think that I'll try is better than I can't. I will say that. So if you're starting with I can't and maybe what feels true to you, I always say never say things that don't feel true in your heart. When you think you're just lying to yourself when it feels like total BS, it's not helping you at all. So don't just say something because I told you to say it, because someone else you listened to told you to say it, or some book told you to say it. If it feels like a total lie, it's really not going to help you get anywhere. So instead, you want to work with where you're at. And so if I'll try is the most positive phrase you can reach for, it's better than I can't. But what would be best is I will, I am going to, or I don't want to. That's not important to me. I'm not going to. It's one or the other, really, right? You're either going to go all in and make it happen, or it's just not a priority for you, and that's okay. I'll try falls too much in the middle. So we're going to go into why I recommend not to say that now. Why I recommend not to say I'll try is because it gives you a way out. It's sort of like, I'll put in a little bit of effort, but if I'm not rewarded right away, I can give up, because I didn't say I would be committed. I just said I would try. So let's use an example here. If you are pursuing a goal, let's say the goal is you're trying to start a side business. You have this dream that you really want to pursue, but you're really unsure about it. And you just tell yourself, I'll just try it and see if I get any orders, see if I get any interest from customers. And if I do, I'll continue. But if I don't, then it's fine. I'll just continue on this job I hate. Ultimately, if you hate the job and your goal is to start a business, or your goal is to get a different job, or whatever it is, instead of saying, I'll try, say, I will. I will make this work. I will find a job I love. I will build a business that can replace this job, even if it takes 10 years. Because ultimately, if you're not happy, and so you've set this goal, then the only answer is to stay committed until you achieve the goal, no matter how many tries it takes, no matter how many times it takes you to change course. There's really no good reason to say I'll try, because if it is something that you're just not willing to put in a lot of effort on, that's okay. But again, why even put your effort into it in the first place? I always tell people, instead of putting 10 steps forward here and 10 steps forward there and 10 steps forward there, try 30 steps forward in an area you're really passionate about. So if you're not passionate enough about this thing to be willing to be resilient, to be willing to stay committed, to do more than just try, then Why put in any effort at all? Now, I do want to mention, what about when things are outside of your circumstances? What about when things are outside of your control, right? Because that happens. There are often things that are outside of your control. The idea that comes to mind for me is when the forecast was rain on my wedding day. I could not control the forecast. Nothing I did. No matter how many prayers I said and positive thoughts I chose to think, I could not control that it was supposed to rain on my wedding day. So instead, what I focused on was what I could control. And ultimately, that's what I recommend. Focus on everything you can control and be resilient and committed to those things. So for my wedding day, I could control what time our pictures were based on the forecast. So the morning of the wedding, we saw that the rain forecast had sort of shifted. It had moved up a little bit. And so it was predicted to rain probably about an hour after our ceremony ended. I couldn't control how long the ceremony was because it was in a church. And so it was kind of just the normal hour-long ceremony. And we also had 400 guests at our wedding. Yes, if you didn't know that, Richie and I both have extremely big families. And that was as small as we could get the guest list. It was quite excessive. And we also had a 28-person bridal party, or I probably should say 29, counting our ring bearer, my nephew, who was 4 at the time. We each had 14 bridesmaids and groomsmen, plus my nephew was our ring bearer. So this was a huge ordeal to get pictures, to get our guests out of the church, to get out of the church with all these people trying to say hi to us and talk to us when we had a very short time frame. And so what I could control getting out of church as quickly as possible. That was the first thing. So we didn't do a receiving line at the end of the mass where we would, greet our guests. We chose to greet them at the reception. We also chose to get family photos as quickly as possible. So we wanted to get family photos before everyone left the church. They were not perfect. They did not turn out perfect. You cannot see everyone perfectly because I told our photographer, I don't want you organizing people for 15 minutes. You know how it is when you go to a wedding, when they're doing a family photo. It's this whole ordeal. I said, I want you to make an announcement to Gregorio family. It's now time for your photo. Everyone who is an aunt, uncle, first cousin, please come up for the photo. And wives, husbands, everyone assembled up. We took the photo and it was done. Within 5 minutes, we got both family photos. We got out of there. We got to the field. I don't know what else you would call it. It was actually, this sounds so tragic and awful. It was actually a cemetery that we took our pictures at. Our photographer recommended it. He said it is incredibly beautiful. Obviously where we took the photos was not where the gravestones were or anything. It was this area where there was a big field and there was this building behind it. It had these beautiful columns. And so we got a little bit of city feel, and we got this really suburban feel where we had these weeping willow trees, and it was beautiful. And we got great photos there. It was about 15 minutes from where we actually had our ceremony. And so now we had about 45 minutes from the time that we arrived to take our pictures to when the rain was supposed to start. So I also told our photographer, another thing I could control, can you be sort of quick on the bridal party photos? Because we already took many photos before the ceremony with all the bridesmaids and me at my mom's house and all the groomsmen and Richie at his parents' house. And so we didn't need 1 million of those photos. We needed a couple group shots of the whole bridal party. But 1 or 2 was wonderful. We didn't need 50 because we were probably only going to pick 1 or 2 anyway and put it in our album. And that was going to be the extent of it. We really were looking for photos of ourselves as a couple because we were the ones who got married. And so we did limited bridal party photos due to the rain, and we were able to get in all of our photos. And our last photo was taken just before the storm started and the sky is black and my dress is white and it is the coolest wedding photo ever. I would have never imagined that I was interested in having a black sky for my wedding photos. I would have never prayed for rain on my wedding day, although they say it's good luck. And here we are 2.5 years into marriage with a baby boy. So clearly things are going well. So maybe the good luck sprinkled some positive energy on us. But ultimately, what I learned from the circumstance that I could not control on my wedding day was 2 things. Number one, sometimes things that are outside of your control that feel like they are a problem actually are serving you. I love that photo more than any other photo that was taken of us on our wedding day. And it felt like the worst thing in the world to have a prediction of rain. I never would have predicted that that would be my favorite photo. So sometimes the things that feel like they are ruining our day, our week, our year, our life could actually be serving us in some way, and we just can't see it yet. And the second thing I learned is that we can focus on what we can control, and we can put all of our effort into that, and we can let go of the rest. And when we get back to the phrase, I'll try is focused on the things that are in your control. We're not talking about the things that are outside of your control. You can let those things go and instead shift your attention and energy to the things that are in your control. And instead of saying, I'll try, that's when you say, I will. So for me, I will change the time. I will give the photographer specific instructions on what we want, on what's best for us based on these circumstances that are outside of our control. Not, I'll try to fit the photos in, because what would I have done? Probably nothing. I wouldn't have changed anything. And it would have rained before we ever got to take a single photo of us as a couple. So that's a small example of something that is outside of my control, but I was still able to use the phrase, I will, and take control of what I could take control of. And finally, the third and final phrase that I no longer say, or I do my best not to say, and whenever I say it, I will rephrase, is I have to. And I think this is the one that I honestly hear the most. I have to grocery shop. I have to do the laundry. I have to record a podcast. I have to get these videos done before the end of the week because I need episodes to go live. I have to feed Michael because he's hungry. I have to take a shower. I have to go to this event I have. Let's say it's a wedding or a baby shower or a bridal shower. We always have something we have to do. And how does it feel? It feels terrible, doesn't it? It's not fun to feel like you have to do things. What would it feel like if you said something else? Now, people always say, shift it to I get to. I get to feed my baby because I'm so happy to have a baby. Of course I am. Of course. But I get to never landed with me. It never rolled off my tongue. It never really felt natural to me. And like I was saying earlier, you want to say things that really feel genuine for you. If I get to feels really good for you, absolutely say I'll get to. For me, it just didn't feel that way. And so that's not a phrase that I choose instead of I have to. I look at the situation and I ask myself, what could I say instead that would be more aligned? If it's something that I genuinely am excited about or feel grateful for, I will choose a phrase that fits that. So for example, I'm excited to record my podcast on video because I was so excited, but I still may have said, I have to go there now. I have to leave my house at this time so I can make it on time to record my episodes, right? Even though I was so excited. I love recording podcasts and I especially love video. And gosh, as a new mom, I love to put on clothes that don't have spit up all over me. And I love to curl my hair and put on some makeup. So this is so fun. Yet I still probably chose the phrase I have to earlier in my day because we're just consumed in this culture of blah, 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 running from one thing to another and always having things to do. So I would instead shift that to I'm excited to do these things. Maybe it's something that is more neutral, like laundry. I'm going to be honest. I don't love laundry. I don't love cutting up strawberries. But you know what's funny? I love what those things get me. I love having my clean clothes put away in my drawers. So when I'm getting dressed, when I'm picking out my clothes, all of the things that I want to wear are just sitting there waiting for me. And I love when I open my fridge and I have a container of freshly cut strawberries waiting for me to eat. And I hate when I have to rinse off the strawberries, cut up the strawberries. And now, especially with a crying baby, I just won't have time. And then I'm going to have to just like hold up the strawberry and just bite it and throw it away, the stem. That's my life if I don't do the things ahead of time. So instead, I will choose a different phrase instead of I have to. And I will say, I really love having cut up strawberries. And while I'm not a huge fan of the actual process of cutting them up, I'm really grateful that I have 5 minutes right now where Michael's taking a nap and I can cut up these strawberries. And I know I'm really going to love having them cut up. So I can choose a new way of thinking about this situation that just feels a little bit better. And it's still honest. I think that so many people think that positive self-talk and positive thinking is this la la land dream world thing that is not rooted in reality. And ultimately, if that's how you're thinking, again, it's not going to help you. It's not going to serve you. It's going to feel like a lie. You're going to give up. You're going to stop choosing positive thoughts. And it's just ultimately not going to support you. But instead, you can be truthful and honest about where you're at with something and look at it from a different perspective. And ultimately, that's what this is about with I have to. So there are some I have to's that you might just really feel grateful for and be able to choose a phrase like I'm really excited to or I'm really grateful for. But there are other I have to's that you might really dread, but you can find a perspective that just makes it feel a little less heavy, that helps you recognize how good you might feel after you do the thing. So many things in our life are that way where it doesn't feel good before, but it feels really good after. And so maybe that's where you're going to focus your attention and energy. Either way, choose a different phrase that resonates with you, that feels true for you, where you don't say I have to, because that one is not going to feel good. So I hope this episode served you, giving you some new phrases to say instead of I can't, I'll try, and I have to. And instead, you can choose some more empowering phrases that will support you in feeling better and achieving your goals. Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you have the most amazing week, and I will catch you in the next episode.